Dennis would maybe mention it, but say, Chuck's the chairman of the Woodbridge Outdoors. Why don't you say, Chuck? This is one of those things. It's all that's kids, right? I mean, supposedly that's executives.
Because it's not that bad. The skunk's right where I left him.
On the bypass?
You saw that it was right now
Yeah, I
on the
saw
road.
it. Yeah, right. That's funny, because when I passed him the first time going, I thought, boy, that looks pretty fresh. I didn't realize it was just that much.
Several years ago, we were meeting over there. City council, I said, I want to say,
Well,
that's the shortest meeting
Did you?
under
God, yeah.
2 minutes.
How much?
Thank you, yes.
Extremely short one.
Ellen,
Yeah, it was like ultra short. I couldn't believe it.
Jeremy with us?
election.
City council.
Yeah, but he's with us. He's dialed in. There's Jeremy.
Right here.
Excellent. Glad you can hear me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to invite anyone who wishes to speak this evening to be sure to sign in on one of the sign-up sheets, either for a public hearing or for public comment. And with that, I will call the meeting to order. Welcome one and all to the second meeting of 2023. And I will invite you all to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda. Were there any matters, pieces that council would like to add or modify? Hearing none, we will adopt the agenda as presented. Next item is number 4, proclamations, and I will invite Vicki Cover-Turner to join me up front, recognizing her service as the Vice Chair of the Lexington Electoral Board. Eager to offer this proclamation recognizing Vicki Cover-Turner, Vice Chair of the Lexington Electoral Board, on the occasion of her retirement from the Electoral Board. Whereas Vicki Cover-Turner retired from her position as Vice Chair of the Lexington Electoral Board on December 31st, 2022. And whereas on October 17th, 2003, Vicki Turner was initially appointed to the electoral board by the judges at the circuit court. We hope the only time that you were in the circuit court. Whereas Vicki began her first term under the administration of then Governor Mark Warner and continued to serve as a member of the electoral board during the terms of 6 Virginia governors, both Republicans and Democrats. And whereas during her tenure on the electoral board, Vicki served in each of the 3 administrative roles consisting of board secretary, chair, and vice chair. And whereas Vicki Turner has been a longstanding member of the community, contributing to its success through service on multiple boards and commissions. And whereas Vicki Turner has earned the respect and support of her fellow board members, the Lexington City Council, and the citizens of our community by demonstrating an unwavering commitment to the law and to the electoral process. And whereas Lexington, Virginia is a community which encourages its citizens to go the extra mile and maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Vicki Turner embodies the spirit of the go the extra mile philosophy as evidenced by her personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Vicki Turner has fulfilled her oath of office to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and faithfully and impartially perform her duties of her office to the best of her ability. Now therefore be it resolved That I, Frank Friedman, Mayor of the great city of Lexington, Virginia, with the support of the Lexington City Council and by virtue of the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia, do hereby proclaim January 19th, 2023 as Vicky Clover Turner Day. I invite all friends and family assembled here and all of the community to celebrate and to pause to recognize your achievement of service to our community. Also offer sincere congratulations and best wishes for all your future endeavors. Signed and adopted this 19th day of January, 2022. Vicki, thank you for the tireless work that you and I know your family has put in these 20 years. And our city and our community are better for it. Thank you. Thank you all. I didn't realize I was gonna exhaust you with an entire day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
That's why I'm tired.
Thoroughly enjoyed the work. And a lot of fun and a wonderful learning experience. I'm happy to have done it. So keep learning. All right. Thank you.
Those that continue on their duty on the electoral board and recently appointed have big shoes to fill. So work hard and make us proud. Next item on the agenda, presentations, and I'd like to invite Leslie Ayers, Friends of Rockbridge Swimming, to give council a presentation on swimming in our community.
Swimming in our community, yes. Hello, and thank you for having me. When I was looking through for materials that I wanted to present or information, I found this, and it's so funny because we had two people, Jim Giannini and John Ellisted, who were part of this way back when in 2005, a proposal to build a pool. And the city of Lexington and Rockbridge County really came through to help us do that. So this experiment that we had 15, well, more than that,
Yes.
20 years ago, it was a successful one. And we clearly, yes.
I was just going to ask you to be loud and proud. Slide that closer
loud.
so
Are
all
you
the
loud
folks in the
and
back can see you. Yes.
Okay.
I
Can you hear me?
want to make sure everyone can hear.
Okay.
Thank you.
So anyway, in short, it's been a great 20 years. And I think we proved that, yes, Lexington, even though we have facilities, other places, a community pool has been a great thing for our community. So, and some of the things that we have been able to get back to, because some of them we couldn't during the COVID, like swim lessons, we were able to do teach 303 children to swim. That's not 303 lessons, that's 303 children, and with on average about 6 lessons a day. Those are just our group lessons. We were able to do again this year using the outdoor pool because they really love being at the outdoor pool when everybody else is in school. They just think that that is wonderful to be able to do their programming out there. And that was 55 kids. We did a police camp. I can't remember how many kids, summer fun, 26 kids. And I'm forgetting a whole bunch. Washington and Lee ESOL's program that we had 40 children there, and we hope to double that number perhaps this coming year. So we have done a lot of teaching, a lot of catching up the community in their safety training, and we're very proud of that. That is one of the main missions that we do, is to make sure kids are water safe and they have access to that wonderful pool, outside and inside. Let's see, the other things that we do, we are open 56 hours per week for open public swim, 9 hours a weekly aquasize classes, and 16 hours of weekly swim programming for youth. Those are our swim teams that we do. We serve between on average about 120 to 160 people a day. That's a lot for that little pool. And I'm very proud. It's well used. We open at 5:30. It used to be 3 days a week. Now it is every 5 days a week. and of course on Saturday and Sunday, and we're only closed 5 days a week. So we certainly, it is definitely a well-used public asset. We are home to the Rockbridge High School and of course our storm teams, and they are coming back to being fully, people are just coming back to the pool after these two years. What else can I tell you? We're responsible for preparing our lifeguards, teaching our lifeguards, not only for the city of Lexington's lifeguards, but the county's lifeguards, Buena Vista's lifeguards. And this year we are teaching VMI's lifeguards so that they can soon open that pool with plenty of staff. In just 2 or 3 years ago, I came last year to report that we decided as a board that what we needed to do by 20 years in, we needed to renovate the facility. And I'm very proud to say that we have done a really nice job on that. New pool, all the plaster has been replaced, the tile has been replaced. It is gorgeous painting. Not only are some things as good as they were, some things are quite honestly better than they were. So come take a look. It's a beautiful structure. New air handling, 3-leaf door at the end, safety and security measures. Some of that was installed with the city of Lexington and the police department to help us with that. Our generator is the one thing that has been paid for but not delivered yet, but that probably doesn't surprise you given what we're going through. We have been able to have, we have a contingency fund, a capital maintenance fund to keep these things in place. And we are now entering into what are we going to do in 5 years when we need to replace the dome? So we're put money aside for that, but our goal is not to just have the money to replace the dome as is. The dome has a R value of 4, an insulation value of 4. It was a wonderful solution then when people didn't think as much about energy efficiency. And we were very fortunate to partner with Deschamps. At that time, it was Deschamps, and they helped us with our air handling. So our dome, even 15 years ago, was not the average dome. In fact, we're the first dome in the country to actually come up with a hybrid where you condition the air coming back so that you're saving some of that. So for a dome, we're about as energy efficient as you can get, but not as energy efficient as we should be. So we're looking into air handling units, tying that with some sort of solar panels, maybe on the building itself, and also going to a hard structure instead of a dome. So we want to share those ideas as they start to congeal, I guess, and really excited about those. This has been 5 years since this, we're in our 5th year of our lease, believe it or not. So it is time, and I hope that you will see us as good stewards of the property and of the facility. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
Yeah. Members of council have questions for Leslie. Leslie, have you all begun to spec or estimate what the new covering?
Well, we definitely have the price of the existing or replacement of that. We are starting to price components, but also really just looking into systems. There are a couple out there that are similar, but a hard structure with a lot more insulation. It's a company called Sprung, if you want to look that up. And there are a couple of other ideas working on perhaps using wooden beams, similar to what VMI has, but a lot smaller, of course. Those are also good systems. So right now we're investigating all of the different systems and bringing in people with the kind of knowledge that we need to come up with some really good ideas.
Excellent. Great. There are no other questions. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for your leadership on the for swimming and all things aquatic in our community.
Thank you.
I'd like to pause before we go to our next presentation, and a point of personal privilege. I intended earlier in the agenda to pause and reflect on the life and service of Pat Mayercheck, who you probably saw his notice of his passing last week in the News Gazette and a beautiful editorial that was written about him. But I would, lots of nice things to say about Pat, but I would ask you all to pause and join me in a moment of silence in recognition for his service to our community. Thank you very much. If you knew Pat, he was lighthearted, good-natured, and apparently I didn't realize how much of a musician he was, and for the number of years. But a great picture in the paper last week of the Shoguns. I wish I'd had a chance to see them then, or even most recently when they reunited. So, but please remember the Mayercheck family in your thoughts in the days ahead. Next item on our agenda is the Architectural Review Board presentation, and here to project her best inner Robin LeBlanc is Elizabeth Tafe. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Yes, hi. Good evening. I am the vice chair. I am the fairly new vice chair for the Architectural Review Board. And I'd just like to give you some quick highlights about our annual report. Last year, the ARB held 18 regular meetings and reviewed 34 certificates of appropriateness. And all those applications and the board decisions are listed in the annual report. The one thing that the board is really proud of and wanted to highlight is our Lexington, Virginia Historic District Design Guidelines. And we want to encourage the public to view this resource on the city's website. And then finally, I just wanted to say that the board is appreciative of the considerable effort made by all businesses to meet the Historic District Design Guidelines during the application process, and that these efforts help to preserve the historic fabric of our community while also improving the economic success of downtown Lexington. So thank you.
Wonderful. Any questions for Elizabeth?
One question, not a hard one though. I mean, but thanks for being here. But a couple years ago, we started to appoint the alternates.
Mhm.
And so now it's been, I guess, year 1 or 2 years of having them. How has that been going for the ARB? I mean,
I think that's been going well because there are times when we absolutely need the alternate. So, and I started as an alternate.
Right.
So, yeah.
wonderful. I just, we never want to hold up business owners that are working to get something approved. And so that just wondered how that was doing. And we always have a challenge filling some of our spots on boards and commissions. And, I'm glad that you came from an alternate. Now you're vice chair. So thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to say a great success story of the whole process that you just articulated. So thank you for being with us. Congratulations. Other duties is assigned as vice chair. You find out how quickly things can get passed along. But thank you for being with us and providing that. And I encourage, as Elizabeth mentioned, for residents to go and look at the details and the design guidelines that are part of the ARB responsibilities. Sometimes it's misunderstood what the responsibilities are, but it's very well detailed in the packet tonight, as well as on the website. Next, I'd like to call on the Planning Commission Chairman, Blake Chester. Blake, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, 204 Paxton Street. Thank you, Council. I'm happy to represent the Lexington Planning Commission. You all have a copy of the annual report that's submitted. I'll just read the highlights for the record. In 2022, the Planning Commission held 21 regular meetings and a virtual joint educational session on housing with the Threshold Housing Commission. Additionally, the Green Infrastructure Working Group, comprised of Commissioners Bradley and Driscoll and 10 community partners, met 8 times. In October, the Green Infrastructure Working Group presented a report outlining its recommendations for how Lexington can achieve the goals, objectives, and strategies established in the Green Infrastructure chapter of the Comprehensive Plan. As submitted in the annual report, there were 21 applications in the table attached. And in February, the Planning Commission provided feedback on the draft of the City of Lexington Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan made available to the city by a grant from the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment. A significant focus of the Planning Commission over the past year was the discussion and development of use and design standards for a new planned development mixed-use zoning district that will allow a mix of uses, including multifamily residential units in the C2 zoning district. After 12 months of careful deliberation, The Planning Commission public hearing was held on September 22nd and continued to October 13th, when the commission voted to recommend the adoption of the zoning text amendment for the new PDMU zoning district. Looking forward to 2023, the commission will begin discussion of additional zoning amendments, including the consideration of amended use and design standards for accessory dwelling units and new use and design standards for cottage housing to create new infill housing opportunities in Lexington. These discussions are expected to continue well into 2023 and provide ample opportunity for public input and research on the best practices. On behalf of the Planning Commission, we would like to thank City Council, our current council liaison, Leslie Strawn, and past commission chair Jamie Gooden, and also past commission vice chair and now newly elected council member Nicholas Betts for all the hard work that you have put into Planning Commission. We also like to thank the citizens of Lexington for allocating time and resources to plan its future. We encourage Lexington's residents and businesses to engage in the planning process, as their participation enables us to represent the collective vision of the city's residents more accurately. I also want to send a special thanks to the hardworking planning staff, including Mr. Arnie Glazer and Kate Beard, for their professional and outstanding leadership. And they make our job a lot easier. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Terrific. Nick, Leslie, any questions for Blake?
What's kind of the top order of business for this year?
We just began discussion and how to discuss and the strategy for discussing the accessory dwelling units. So that's sort of the big chunk that we're going to be biting out of right now. So we've had a couple citizens already comment on that matter, and I think that's going to be our main focus at the beginning of the year.
Terrific. Thank you for being with us and for your leadership on the board. And that 2023 is the conclusion of your current term, and I hope that we will can count on you for future service as well. Just think about it.
All right.
We discovered today when we were having a legislative day in Richmond that the General Assembly is also looking at accessory dwellings. And so there may be some additional guidance and certainly more discussion at the state level on dealing with that issue to make things a little bit better, to provide more infill, as you mentioned. So
Great. That all sounds excellent.
Please,
thank you all very much.
Please take thanks for me and all of council back to the Planning Commission, and we look forward to future joint meetings and continue to work collaboratively and successfully.
Great. Thank you for all your work. Appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda is the Board of Zoning Appeals and our chairman, Jim Giannini.
Jim couldn't be here tonight, even though you may have seen him a little
Yes.
bit earlier. He indicated he couldn't attend, but I think in support of Vicky that he showed up and attended that portion, but perhaps had the good sense to leave before getting to his annual report. The annual report is the BZA held one meeting this past year, and that we would like to thank Mary Harvey Halstead for her years of service on the Board of Zoning Appeals and all the other boards that she also has sat on. That's all I have for a report.
Excellent. Any questions from council?
I could take a point of personal.
Please.
Architectural Review Board has gone really well with that alternate, because we were several instances, particularly in the summer when folks are gone on vacation, that we didn't have enough for a quorum, but we haven't had that issue since having two alternates.
Great.
It's gone well.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arnie. And thank you to all the board members of the BZA and the work that they've done. And it appears we have a vacancy. So if anyone is drawn to participating on the Board of Zoning Appeals, we would welcome your participation. Next item on the agenda, we're continuing the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak on the matter of construction at 406 Spotswood Drive? Anyone here tonight? Debbie, please come on up.
Debbie Pollard, 5 Jordan Street. I spoke the last time, but I didn't quite get through everything, so I thought I'd do it again this time. I did just want to address the issue of the affordable housing situation, because I think a lot of people have confusion about what affordable housing is. And basically, in a nutshell, it means that as a baseline, we shouldn't be spending more than 30% of our income on housing. And so I just sat down to do a few numbers and look at some of the salaries in the area. And I think it's going to be really difficult for young professionals coming to this area to be able to afford apartments in this new apartment complex. Some of the numbers that have been bannered around for rent have been $1,800, maybe a little less, maybe some more, but depending on the size of the apartment that they get. But to afford $1,800 a month in rent, an individual needs to be earning $75,000 a year. And that's concerning because the median income for a household in our city was $26,982. So we've got a huge discrepancy. Males had a median income of $35,000 versus $26,000 for women. So that's concerning. You know, we want to bring good teachers to the area. The universities are hiring young people and assistant professors and that sort of thing. And even W&L, who for a wide variety of employees, including assistant professors, are frequently below $75,000 a year. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how we can make some number of these apartments affordable, but I think it needs to be considered. I think we need to look into it. Certainly, it's illegal to turn away Washington only parents if they want to come and rent an apartment, but it seems like there needs to be some management around that to be able to help these kids out. You know, they're young, they're starting out, and they don't want to be renting some house out in the county that requires a lot of upkeep. So one last thing, as of January 7th, 2023, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Fairfax County, Virginia, where it's a lot more expensive to live and where the salaries are greater, is only $1,973. So for us to be expecting these young professionals to fork out $1,800 a month for rent, I think is unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie, and thanks for sharing that information with us. In looking at affordable housing, there are lots of definitions for that, and I think under my report, with support from other council members, we have some other numbers of median income in the general area that we learned in Richmond today. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding 406 Spotswood Drive? Mary Ellen, welcome. And
hello, Mary Ellen Cook, 4 North Lewis Street. I am probably 3 minutes.
yes, ma'am.
Call me on it. Okay. I am, when I look at that tract of land, that 2.3 acres of land, as you know, I drew maps for soil survey, in fact, here in Rockbridge County. And I was very much in tune with the topography. And I look at that open piece of land and I say, perhaps it's left open without any building on it because it serves a purpose. If I were a raindrop, I would land above that building, but that tract of land. But all of that has been already developed. It's what we call impermeable surface. So the only place that rain has a chance of hitting the ground and actually permeating into the ground is that particular tract of land. I've followed, I know there's a retention pond somewhere in the design, But again, we're talking about a retention pond channeling a tremendous amount of rainfall that now lands on open ground into a very defined culvert. I've walked that culvert land across Spotswood down into that low-lying area of the cemetery over on, and it goes into that little neighborhood. It crosses over into East Preston Street, correct? East Preston Street, and down into along Davidson Street. And you can see how those already, with that channelized water that's already there, that though the rest of the water flow has problems, okay? And you can do it yourself. You could see a hole in the ground, as a matter of fact, along that whole channel. Then it goes under the bridge into another channelized area. It's the last piece of open land, that particular Spotswood Drive, 2.3 acres. It's there. It's never been developed. Perhaps there's a good reason why it's never been developed. It serves another purpose beyond what we're thinking of using it for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. And appreciate your insights and sharing your professional knowledge with us as well. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to 406 Spotswood Drive? Hearing none, we will continue the public hearing until our February 2nd meeting and move on to the next item, which is consideration of the minutes. They were provided in your packet, an opportunity to review them before. Are there any changes or issues? If not, we will adopt those as presented. Hearing no objection, they are adopted. Next is citizens' remarks and comments. And I would invite, is there anyone who would like to speak to anything not on the agenda? Who would like to speak to council this evening? Hearing none, at 7:31, I will close the public or the citizens' remarks and comments and move right into our consent agenda. The consent agenda has one item on it for council's consideration, and I welcome your consideration.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second and a roll call vote, please. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Unfinished business. I'll call on the city manager. Discussion amending the noise ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, there is no business in either of these cases this evening. The city attorney and I are still reviewing these matters, primarily the noise ordinance, and then the horse center issue, of course, is coordinated with Rockbridge County and also conversations with our IDA. So no business this evening.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, glad that we have those and contend with them as they present themselves. Next, reports for boards and commissions. The Blue Ridge Resource Authority, Mr. Smith.
No report.
Thank you, sir. Main Street Lexington, Mr. Smith. The new year.
Main Street Board met last, I'm still reeling from that car ride back from Richmond. Last week, the purpose of the meeting was a self-evaluation for Virginia Main Street to determine any deficiencies or weaknesses that our current Main Street program has. We got through most of it. The rest, I think, was delivered to the remainder of the board online to complete. And that was what we did. And a report. Any questions?
Hearing none. Good work. Thank you. Planning Commission, Ms. Strawn.
No report. Chairman Blake Chester covered the topic, which was accessory dwelling units.
Excellent. Thank you, ma'am. Regional Tourism Board, Mr. Betts.
Yes, sir. A media tour took place back in October of last year, and another media tour is scheduled to take place in April, from the 18th to 21st of this year. Articles after the October media tour appeared on southernliving.com, entitled 5 Reasons to Visit Lexington, Virginia. And then there's another article, Small Towns We Love, Your Guide to Lexington, VA, appeared on styleblueprint.com after the October media tour. Hopefully the April media tour will be successful in raising awareness about our great area. Virginia Tourism has opened its first cycle of grants. My understanding is that we're eligible to apply for some of this funding. We also discussed the need for more signature events in the area. And just a couple things to put on everybody's radar. There is a February 9th, on February 9th, the Upper James River Water Trail meeting at the Horse Center will take place. And on April 14th, there's a ribbon cutting for the track trail where there will be 2 kiosks in Lexington.
Talk about that ribbon cutting again. Will be where?
I believe it was the track trail. I can follow up on that and have some more information.
Okay.
In February will be our next tourism meeting, so I will have information.
More details. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Hate to miss a ribbon cutting. Love them. Next item, Raro. Mr.
No
Ziegler.
report.
No report. Everybody's playing well and playing hard.
Got it.
Excellent. Threshold, Miss Alexander.
No report, but our next meeting will be Wednesday, the 27th of January at 4 p.m.
Wednesday, the 27th.
Is that what that,
The 27th is a Friday, I believe.
excuse me, the 25th.
25th. Very good.
Sorry about that.
Knew there was something out of sync there. Thank you, and encourage people to make arrangements to join Threshold team to talk about housing. Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
The MSA board has not met since our last meeting. However, we are planning to have a meeting on the 4th Tuesday of this month. So we're talking about 2 Tuesdays away. And after that, I feel certain I'll have a report. But as of tonight, no report.
Thank you, Mr. Alligood. For my report, I have a few things to report on. First and foremost, City Manager and Leslie and Chuck and I met at 7:15 this morning and drove to Richmond for Legislative Day. And wanted to call on Chuck for a brief report on that, but we're a little goggle-eyed from an early start and about 12 hours ago when we all met, but still going. Chuck.
Our first meeting this morning was with Virginia First Cities, the representatives from Virginia First Cities, as well as gentlemen to the topic of affordable housing, gentlemen from the Virginia Housing.com, PDHA. So the topic of what affordable housing is and how it's defined, we talked about for a while, and it was just good, healthy conversation to further define what affordable housing actually is. So that was helpful for me personally, because it's a term we lob around, and really everyone has their own idea what it is, but it's rarely the same. Other representatives from Stanton, Danville, Portsmouth. Did I say Stanton?
Yep. Newport News.
Norfolk, we're all there. The main bills, and we had a presentation from Jim Regenbald about the budget and big numbers thrown around, $2.4 billion in revenues anticipated, with another 1.1 billion of carryover from last year. Big chunk of that money will be spent on one-time funding for the next year, and a lot more tax cuts to make Virginia more competitive in a nationwide marketplace to recruit jobs and businesses. A lot of money going toward mega site development for job site ready areas for, in addition to recruitment and job growth. The bills in question on the table that were particularly concerned to the city, one deals with short-term rentals. And the bill more or less saying that cities will have no control, no regulation over short-term rentals of those rentals operated and or managed by realtors. Any regulations that have been put in place, any prohibitions that have put in place are swept aside. Realtors will have complete control of how those short-term rentals are operated, which was described as a one-size-fits-all type of legislation that goes completely against the grain of what's reasonable and appropriate for each and every community, how they see fit on how short-term rentals should be regulated. So we voiced quite a bit of concern about the passage or any support to that bill too, but we met with both newly elected Ellen Campbell and Senator Creed Eads and voiced our concern there. Another bill that we feel strongly needs to be focused on is the increase of about, let me step back. The moratorium of annexation has been presented and will likely continue for cities to annex county land to grow their borders. That moratorium has been in place since the 80s. As a result of that moratorium, though, the law enforcement in the cities was supposed to get compensated as a result in sort of exchange for the moratorium. That current funding is at 240 million, and the legislature is looking at a increase of that funding of 10% of 20 million, even though it hasn't been increased over the last 2 years. Third, those are the two primary ones for Campbell and Deeds. We did stress in the one-time funding area, if there's money to be found to help with the Department of Social Services programming that we're doing here, specifically new site for that program, as well as, how can we incorporate Department of Health, Rockbridge Health Center, and possible other programming. And a big thanks went to Senator Deeds in helping identify and secure the gambling funding going to the Horse Center, at least for the next 2 years, to help reinforce the success of the Horse Center. And the question came up, well, that's for 2 years. Do you anticipate continuing that funding? I think it's logical that it would and should, but of course we have no confirmation at this point. And I think that covers it, most of it.
Jail per diem, maybe? Increasing the jail per diem. I guess the only other one that we were interested in was increasing the jail per diem from the state for state
Prisoners.
Yeah, state prisoners. Thank you for the
Localities
term.
or housing.
Right, that we're keeping them over 60 days. The states should be picking up the cost for that, and they're down at like $4 a day, which doesn't come anywhere near covering that.
Cost to the.
It was a productive day. I'm glad we attended. It's good to see a lot of folks we haven't seen in a while. It's good to see how the process works and actually get to meet with our locally represented or local elected representatives and share concerns and be heard. And if you don't do nothing, the answer is no. We're trying to emphasize what our concerns are and get action on those concerns. And report.
I'd say one of the refreshing pieces was the fact Ellen Campbell said, I've been getting emails about these things. Sometimes you send emails or correspondence to your elected officials and you think, did anybody ever read it? But she's getting them and reading them. So I was proud to learn that piece. With the relative to Debbie's comments earlier, and we can talk offline, Debbie, but I'm curious to know where you got your numbers, because when we were talking to the VDH or Virginia Department of Housing Authority, the median income for the city of Lexington was 60,000. 66,000. So we'll have to compare notes. And I think the other defining piece was that affordable housing is defined as 60 to 80% of the median income. That's like an affordable home or housing project. People at 60 to 80% of that median income would qualify to participate, if that makes sense. So, Mr. Ziegler.
Just had a question if Virginia First Cities discussed that House Bill 2271, talking about the short-term rentals. Because it, it was introduced by a delegate from Danville. Danville's a part of Virginia First Cities. Typically it's cities, maybe Charlottesville, they've got rules about short-term rentals. Stanton does, the city of Lexington. Obviously, we've got an ordinance that, and we've been targeted before by the legislator, the General Assembly. Just to know if Virginia First Cities would dare go against the realtors lobby on behalf of the cities and actually the residents that have maybe bought a house and want to live in a neighborhood and not a revolving door of visitors.
Well, the question came up from the director of Virginia First Cities as to what we thought about the bill, and we immediately said this is a bad bill. It's there's so much overreach that's inappropriate. And I think they were refreshed to hear about our complete opposition to what is being proposed. And it also includes the protecting the individual homeowner that moves into a residential neighborhood. And those protections as a result of this bill are also being stripped away because of the regulation is removing that protection as a homeowner to have the understanding and confidence that your neighbor next door is going to be your neighbor next door and not a industry subsidiary of the Realty Association. So I think and hope that we helped get that needle shifted over somewhat so that when Virginia First Cities continues their lobbying and expresses their dissatisfaction with that bill, that's what we're hoping for. The nobody from Danville, I think, spoke up about it. So it's hard to say. And it's not just, I think Danville's where that delegate lives, but it also covers all of Pittsylvania County.
Maybe Henry County. I was thinking the patron was from Henry County, but
It's Delegate Marshall. He's
yeah. Yeah, I think one of the bigger pieces that was pointed out by one of the participants in our discussion was the fact that you have communities, I think in Williamsburg, that prohibit short-term rentals entirely. And this would completely negate what they felt was appropriate and important for their community. And there was further discussion about how, the counties surrounding the city of Richmond operate differently and have different set of rules than Virginia Beach, than in the western part of the state. And for everyone to figure out what works best for their community as is currently seems to be a much more appropriate. This overreach by the realtors seemed very intrusive. So that was the general observation. But there's also a wait and see how it unfolds from that standpoint.
But the Virginia First Cities also mentioned that Delegate Marshall seems to be really pushing this thing pretty hard. So in light of that, and please do write your locally elected state representatives, Ellen Campbell and Creed Eads to oppose that bill, because if they don't hear from us, then they don't know what we're thinking, and only except for us four. So sometimes it sounds like or it feels like you're just yelling in the wind, but sometimes you gotta yell, and we just gotta yell a little louder this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Ms. Alexander.
Two things. The income limits that Ms. Pollard mentioned sounded like perhaps the income limits that we use for Section 8 housing. Section 8 housing is an assisted program, which means that the federal government is subsidizing the rents of people who are in Section 8 housing. And those 20-some thousand sounds like the income guidelines that they use. And that's established by the government as well. The other comment that I have is to do with the bill in regard to the one-time funds that are being appropriated for projects. Did they say anything about projects that are already shovel ready, like they a lot of times will say, or projects being proposed?
Are you talking about site development?
Yes.
If I recall, it was broken up into different areas. Some was brand new construction, other was more or less ready to go. We need to, depending on the timeline, 2 years and more. Those are the bigger projects. The more readily buildable and smaller projects, that was another section, and then more immediate adaptable
And
projects. That was part of the first 90 million allocation.
was there a deadline to apply?
It was that I don't recall.
Okay. Thank you.
It was also mentioned that that was a big piece of what the current governor's recommended budget is. So in the priorities that he has, and it falls in hand in glove with some of the tax reductions that he's proposing. So it's kind of give you something now to in exchange. So
So I guess the guidelines will come out later once it's all allocated.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Once they get to the finish line on the budget, which if you can tell us when that is, we can make some money, because there's not much known. It was suggested that there's almost no way it'll end on, I think it's February 20th, when the General Assembly is supposed to end. It will go into extra innings.
And it won't be when we need to know for our budget either.
More than likely. Yes. Any other questions from our legislative excursion? Under my report, I had a couple of other items. One, just wanted to draw your attention to Earth Magic Recycling. If you're not familiar with them, their mission is to make a difference in the environment, one piece of glass at a time. And their mission is to help educate the community about glass recycling, to partner with other businesses and groups to meet recycle goals, and to do something that is not currently being done in our area. And Kathy, whose last name escapes me, has done a great job of getting this business off the ground. If you need some sand, colored or other decorative, she's got a great inventory. And back in the first week of January, she had shared a report with me. In February of 22, she had recycled 605 pounds of glass. And by December, she had increased that to 2,214.2 pounds. So excited to see the production and the progress that she's making. And I think she has some volunteers that are helping with her, as well as a few paid folks. But I was proud that Lexington, out of the 23,763 pounds for the year, 5,620 came from the city of Lexington. We've set up at our recycling at Public Works. If you don't know, we're accepting tin, aluminum, glass, and cardboard. So all at Public Works Recycling. So I encourage you to participate in that and do your part to make the world a little bit better place. The other piece from the Planning District Commission, when we met, our last meeting was in December, and one of the things we did was good news around the region, and wanted to draw your attention again to our neighbors in Buena Vista at the Virginia Innovation Collective. It's Earth Magic is part of that. It's in the old Munter Hundite. That's the one. Facility in Buena Vista, and it's owned and led by the Advancement Foundation, which is a Vinton-based nonprofit focused on small business development. It's organized as somewhat of a collaborative, and if you haven't been over there, I encourage you to go check it out. There's some neat things going on. Co-working space, is things or businesses related to retail and restaurants, and just generally a good vibe and a positive place for folks, and seems to be a real shot in the arm for economic development for the city of Buena Vista. But was excited, a little bit jealous when Augusta County was recognizing the Amazon distribution center that's going in, and that their community got instead of ours, but that good for Augusta and our neighbors there. Additionally, I shared with council at our retreat, but wanted to again affirm for you all that the YMCA has had a management change, and that Bobby Wagner is no longer there. I understand someone from the Botetourt Y will be having responsibility for it on the short end, but I'm not sure what the long-term plan is there. But disappointed with all the great things that Bobby has done for our local Y and local community, especially related to childcare. Her services will be missed, and wish her all the best in her future endeavors. Also, last weekend, had the opportunity to go to Journey Outdoor. Disappointed to lose a business from the city of Lexington, but excited that they've grown so much that they need more space. And they've moved out 60 West just before the stop in, and encourage you to, if you don't have a kayak, go get one and go see the folks at Journey Outdoor. Christina and Brian have a neat business, and they're just good folks. So the ribbon cutting out there celebrating their new location was extremely well attended, despite the cold weathers on Saturday morning and snow flurries. Lastly, with council's blessing, I think, with council's blessing, working towards moving forward on a search for an attorney and legal services, and wanted to formally announce that Charles Allagood and I will be serving as a two-person committee to work with staff to advertise and then review and bring back the top candidates for our legal services in the coming weeks. 4 to 6 weeks, I anticipate we'll have traction on that. And that is all I have, but welcome any questions you all may have. Hearing none, I will pass it to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of items of note. The fire department responded to a couple of calls of some significance recently. One was in Fairfield, where they responded with other units in the county, and unfortunately in that structure fire, a woman, as you may have noted in the paper, did succumb to injuries from that fire. They also responded to a call from Waddell Elementary School because there was smoke in the school. They found that it was a failed HVAC unit, and then the Public Works Department showed up, found out it was a problem with an ionization filtration system, and the only thing damaged was the HVAC unit itself, so no damage to the school. This past weekend, of course, was the CARES Parade and the Sons of Confederate Veterans Parade. Both the fire department and police department were there all weekend, assuring that those parades, those activities were held safely. And they were also joined by members of the Rockbridge County Sheriff Department, Virginia State Police, Buena Vista Police Department, VMI Police Department, Washington and Lee Public Safety Department, and the Southwest Virginia Emergency Management Team. And as we probably all know and recognize, there were no problems with those events because the participants and visitors to our community are very civil and respectful when they hold those events that are important to them. So very positive for our community that we can have those events and people behave well. So that's my report, Mr. Mayor. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Any questions for the city manager? Hearing none, would move to city attorney. Jeremy, any words of wisdom?
I don't know about wisdom, Mr. Mayor, but good evening. Just let you know that since the work session, Jim and I have communicated back and forth and started the process as City Council has asked to take a look at the Code of Ethics. Reached out to some other communities to see what others have along those lines. Started taking a harder look at the Conflicts of Interest Act to make sure that what we have conforms to that. And Jim and I plan to get back to you in the next meeting, hopefully with some recommendations in that regard. As was mentioned earlier, we've taken a look at the noise ordinance. Jim and I have communicated about that and made some suggestions there. Not sure what the time frame is for that. I'll defer to Jim on that, but that should be coming back to you relatively short order. And I saw in Jim's report after the last meeting a reference to a zoning enforcement matter that we had in General District Court. Mr. Glazer and I went there and obtained a zoning violation, a conviction, if you will, relative to some of our enforcement measures. That is a step that's in the process. It doesn't get us to complete enforcement or abatement, but it is a necessary step. In the report, there was some discussion of what else needed to be done. There are some steps already built into our ordinance. So I think Mr. House indicated there might be a need to change some aspects of the ordinance, but I don't think that ultimately will be necessary now that I've had a chance to sit back and review the ordinance. And I hope to be getting with Arnie in the coming days to chart a path forward with regard to that single enforcement issue. And other than that, I've got a handful of other issues going on, but happy to answer any questions you may have. And glad your trip to Richmond was successful.
Thank you, sir. Members of council have any questions for the city attorney? Hearing none, one matter of business or preference and shaping expectations is that once you and Jim have the Code of Ethics and the noise ordinance to bring forward, if they're working in tandem, I would expect that we would have a work session prior to a meeting, or at least a work session to review those and have an opportunity for council to hear the presentation and recommendation and have some healthy discussion about that before we bring it to a council meeting. So just getting to shape expectations. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yes, sir.
As a slight add-on, I meant to bring it up under my report, but I'd like to call on Miss Alexander for a brief report on the meetings with Echelon on the committee that she and Leslie are serving.
Thank you. Ms. Strawn and I met with the Echelon staff last week, along with Arnie Glazer, and we offered a multitude of suggestions that are in keeping with design elements that can utilize what our locality looks like. This is Rockbridge County, so for instance, use some facades that incorporate rock of some sort, as well as brick. Look at colors that are more acceptable to the community in regard to our sky and our mountains and our landscaping, trees, and using varied colors throughout the design. Breaking up the look of the exterior where you might see everything on an entire section, it looks the same, by breaking it up into vertical sections to make some of those sections look different than the others. And then also breaking up the horizontal areas by changing out the textures of the exterior walls. That might be some brick on the bottom, some rock, and then some, what is the board called?
Batten board siding.
batten board siding. There's a difference that was made with the roof. It's still a flat roof, but there were some elements that were considered for the roof that makes the design look totally different. We look forward to presenting that design very soon. We will meet with them again next Thursday, where they will have presented us with more changes that we discussed this morning, that we, wanted to take a look at. I think I can speak for all of us that we're much more pleased with the progress that we're making, and the design looks 1000% different than the one that we saw a month ago. So we're making progress, and we hope that the community will like it so that Leslie and I can still live in Lexington. Because that will be questionable if people don't like it. So we're just looking forward, and we're pleased. Leslie, did you have anything else to add?
I'll just add to set expectations. It is a contemporary design, and that is one thing Echelon was set on. Was they felt like they did not want to create a false history by trying to make a historic looking building. But yes, I think they have been very receptive to all the suggestions and trying to incorporate, as Marilyn said, and Marilyn suggested to them, materials that reflect Lexington. So it's looking good.
One of the things that they said, because we asked when they mentioned they expected to design a very modern look, and we asked, well, how did you come up with that idea? And they said that they wanted to see something in keeping with how the hospital looks. And I'm not going to tell you what I said, but nonetheless, we felt that it could still have their modern look because they did not want to deviate from modern, but the modern look could be totally softened to make it much more palatable to the Lexington community and more acceptable to the whole look of that particular neighborhood. So we're hopeful.
Members of council have any questions for the committee of two? Hearing none, thank you, Marilyn and Leslie, for your efforts and work with the developer, and as we move forward on this promising project to do good things for our community and increase the housing stock for our community. Not aware of any other or any new business.
Can I bring one thing up?
Sure.
If possible and practical, I think it'd be great to explore if the city can pay off some of its higher interest rate debt earlier. If there's no penalty or anything of that nature, it'd be great to save the taxpayers some money. And I think we should explore if that's possible.
Very good. I think at our last or at a retreat, learned that there's some 5% bonds, I think, that may be paying off later this year or in the next couple of years, and some other debt that may be coming due in October. And while we're not earning 5% to pay that off, maybe something that staff could look at and see if it makes sense to accomplish. Very good. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Smith.
If I can address the subject of affordable housing briefly, I think I've figured out where all of our numbers are coming from. U.S. Census data for the city of Lexington has a median household income, and this is the number I was using, of $66,000, the median household income. And Deb, your number was 32. Well, that's per capita income. Okay. So in per capita income is aggregate income divided by the total number of men, women, and children in that group. So it skews the data, or it skews the result, I think, a little bit, as does our population of students. So what's the realistic number? I'm not sure, but it does. The last number in that in that set is persons in poverty percent, and we have 23% poverty rate, which is, but how does the student data skew that? I don't know, but I think it helps understand where we got the numbers that we got.
And along those lines, I think we can all agree on the concept, regardless of what your income is, it should not exceed 30% of your income, what your housing expense should be. And that regardless of what your income is. So that's a solid, and looking at communities around us, they tend to be lower. I think ours is in the mid-30s, if I remember correctly. So not sure if I trust that, but on an individual basis, you shouldn't have more than 30% of your income going towards home housing expense.
That's what the government says.
Correct. Correct. And good fiscal management. Very good.
30% of your adjusted gross income monthly.
Exactly. If there's nothing else to come before council this evening, we stand adjourned. Thank you all for being here and have a wonderful evening and a wonderful balance of January.
Night.
Thank you, Jeremy.
I was doing the calculations.